recording going. And okay, well now the recording's going. So welcome to today's webinar on how to use buyer rebates as a business magnet. And I was talking before I actually started the recording on the power of buyer rebates in today's world of real estate, and particularly in the future of real estate. And that's what today's webinar is going to be all about. It's going to be how to leverage something that very few realtors are, how to do that, and how to make yourself super stand out in your market, how to virtually own a demographic by virtually using this one unbelievably powerful strategy that so few realtors, that it's even on the scope of so few realtors today. And in today's webinar, you will find out why. So without any delay, let me get to the slide presentation. I have about 90 slides. Jen, one of our awesome Maverick coaches, our East Coast representative, has spent hours helping me put this together, putting in all the graphics, making it amazing. So let's pop over to a screen share here. And there we go. And Jen, you let me know if there's any problem, but right now everybody should see that. So let's whip through this in about 30 minutes. I'm going to try to get you through about 90 slides and give you a real inside look at how to leverage this buyer rebate strategy into a powerful business magnet. So Keller Williams, great company, 139,000 agents, more than any firm in the world. Coldwell Banker, if you do surveys, it's the most recognized name among consumers in real estate. Remax, they have, based on surveys, more top producing agents than any other major national real estate firm. And but look at this, the firm with the most consumer website traffic, not the firm with the most agents, not the firm with the most recognized name, not the firm with the most top producers. No, not at all. What about the firm with the most listings per agent? No, it's not Keller Williams, not Coldwell Banker, and not Remax. What about the firm with the most sales per agent? No, it's not Keller Williams, not the one with the most recognized name, not the one with the most top producers. What about the firm with the highest average earnings per agent? The highest average earnings per agent? No, not again. It's not Keller Williams, not Coldwell Banker, not Remax. Now, no criticism of these firms. I'm using these firms because these are some of the biggest, most reputable, best training firms in the world. These are amazing firms. And yet, number of listings, number of sales, highest average earnings, most consumer website traffic, unbelievably, to me, none of these nationally known, remarkable firms, none of these are number one. Who is? Which firm is? Well, there it is right in front of you. I mean, this is like a firm that has overall, it's only in a handful of markets compared to the big firms. So how in the world could it be number one in these categories? Now, here's the deal. Most people think, if you look at their website and look at the calculator on their website, that it's over here. See my little arrow? That the reason Redfin, the discount firm, the evil Redfin, the reason they do so much business is because of their savings to home sellers. But that is actually not the case. It's over here. It's this side of their calculator. You see, many think Redfin's magic is in its 4.5% commission. And in the Washington, D.C. area, it's 4%, where they only take a 1% list side and they co-broke at 3%. But that, in fact, is not the power of Redfin. Anybody can charge less. There's no big deal to that. Anybody can be a bottom feeder. I mean, anybody can just take a race to the bottom. That's not what the Redfin model is all about. Redfin is the first real estate firm to harness the power of buyer rebates as a business magnet. And it's just an unbelievable secret weapon. And if you go to Redfin, the reason that they have so much consumer traffic, the reason that, like in the DC area, we pulled up statistics. Now get this, Redfin has 19 agents in the Washington, D.C. metro area carrying 450 listings. 19 agents carrying 450 listings. Average, what is that? 20 some listings per agent. You got to think about that. There's no firm in the world that's even close to that in terms of the average number of listings per agent. And incidentally, virtually all those listings come into the Redfin's website, and those agents just go out and list those homes. They don't go out and do and farm those on their own. Now, I'm no big advocate of Redfin, and I'm not against Redfin. This is not about Redfin being great or Redfin being bad. This is simply about the fact that on every single Redfin home on their website, if you're a home buyer and you buy direct through a Redfin agent, any Redfin agent, if you buy direct through any Redfin agent, it's a 1, 2, 3 step process on their website. You get a multi-$1,000 rebate back at closing. And that's what generates the traffic. That's the power of Redfin. It isn't about them being a discount real estate firm. It's about the fact that they are drawing buyers like a magnet, like a super powerful magnet. And buyer rebates are their secret weapon. So think back when gold became legal. For those of you that go back that far, at one point it was illegal to own gold in this country. When gold became legal to own, when the law was changed and you were actually allowed to own gold. For those of you who don't know, at one point in our history, you were not allowed to own gold. So, I mean, you could, not gold coins and things, I mean, you could have gold wristwatches and that kind of thing, but you couldn't own gold tender. And when owning gold became legal, the early adopters, the ones who got into that, they made millions selling gold coins, selling this, selling that, selling gold bullion, those kinds of things, selling gold bars, selling actual gold that wasn't like in a ring or jewelry. They made millions. When medical marijuana became legal in many states, the early adopters made millions. I never forget in Arizona, and I'm not an advocate for or against whatever, I've never really studied that whole philosophy of medical marijuana, but I know when it was made legal in Arizona, the early adopters, the people who opened the legal medical marijuana clinics, they made millions. They're making millions today. It's like a license to mine money. So I'm going to tell you that, in my view, home buyer rebates are now legal in 40 states, and the early adopters in real estate, the people who learn this, and there's a lot to learn. This is not as simple as just offering a buyer rebate. I'm going to talk to you about that through this webinar. It's why it's so slide rich. And there's a whole second webinar I'll be doing on how to use it with respect to buyers who are getting a loan and how those buyer rebates can be applied with respect to loan qualification and selling loans off into the secondary market. And I'll be talking about that at the end of the webinar. It's not something that is just like, oh, I think I'll offer a rebate. You really have to understand how to do it. You have to understand the business model behind it, and you have to understand how to market it. But I will tell you, for those who do, I believe that the early adopters are going to own their markets. So why is it off the radar of most realtors? Well, think about it, because it's been taboo for so long. You know, you've not been allowed to do it for so long. And also, this other thing, real estate firms have this conundrum. I know I had a situation back east several months ago where 2 agents who joined my coaching and wanted to implement some of my strategies were with a very, very, very large major national Eastern real estate company, with very conservative, been around since, I don't know, the 1300s or something, not really, but long time. And this firm has offices all up and down the East Coast. And when they went to their office manager said, no, we're not going to let you implement Greg's techniques. And so they called me and I said, well, just give you your money back. And they said, no, we don't want our money back. We want to use these techniques. Will you talk to our manager? Well, actually, I got a hold of the regional manager for this company in that entire region, over maybe 15, 20 offices. We had a nice half-hour conversation, very amicable. And the bottom line was, he said, Greg, I get it. He said, these strategies that you're teaching for these 2 agents who are not among our elite, most productive, they're very good, but they're not among like the top 5% in our company. These will work great. He said, I'm not even going to argue with you. These will really help them pick up market share. But I can't allow them to do it because it's going to tick off my top producers. You know, what it's going to do is then the top producers are going to come in and say, they're taking market share away from me. The top producers are going to come in and say, hey, they're forcing me to have to do it because some of my home sellers and my home buyers are getting wind of it. And so they might ask me to do the same thing. And the bottom line is, he said, look, I got to run a real estate firm. And so I can't have my top producers in a riot. And so, you know, that's one of the other things that goes on with real estate firms. I've run one. I know you got this balance where you want to help the people who aren't among your, let's say, top 10%, but on the other hand, you don't want to tick off and have your top 10% leave. And I can tell you that buyer rebates is such an amazingly powerful strategy. People in the very elite group in the real estate firms probably aren't going to want to do it because they don't need to do it. They're going to need to do it someday, but they don't need to do it now. But the rest of the group's going to want to do it, so there's going to be some friction there. And that's one of the other reasons why it's off the scope, because I assure you this is not being taught inside any of the major national real estate firms. So my view is don't be stuck in the mud. I want to go over 12 benefits of becoming a buyer rebate expert. 12 benefits of becoming a buyer rebate expert. So number one is obviously you can use it to attract more buyers. When you're advertising your listings and offering a buyer rebate, or you're simply, as a buyer agent, offering a buyer rebate, you're going to, in your ads, you're going to attract buyers that you otherwise wouldn't. You're going to attract more sellers. You say, how am I going to attract more sellers? I'm going to talk to you about that a little later in the webinar, because you're going to point out to sellers in your chosen demographic that you're offering a rebate back on their home for people who buy your listing, their home, something other realtors aren't, which is going to attract more buyers. And we'll talk about that. But you're going to be able to attract more sellers with it. You're going to use it to list more homes. Obviously, if you attract more sellers, you can list more homes. And it's really not just that simple. It's one thing to attract sellers to call you. It's another thing to have an amazingly powerful listing presentation where you go in and show a seller in the listing presentation that because of this rebate you're offering to buyers who buy your listing direct through you and you don't have to pay a co-broke, because you're putting money in their hands, that you're actually going to end up putting money in the pockets of the home seller, money over and above the money that any other realtor would put in their pocket. You're going to list more homes. You're going to use it to make more co-broke sales. Well, if you attract more buyers, then you can farm those buyers off, and I'll talk about that later, to your buyer agents. Hopefully you will do that, and you will be a listing-focused person, and you'll end up making more co-broke sales because you'll have more buyers who will buy homes that are not your listings. You use it to sell your listings faster. Well, I think it's logical that if you can attract more buyers, if you offer a substantial multi-$1,000 rebate to buyers, put cash in their pocket, cover all their closing costs and everything, including home inspection, appraisal, and whatever, if you do that to buyers, you're probably going to attract more buyers to your listings, which will sell them faster. And of course, you're going to sell them at higher prices, because you all know, anybody in my coaching knows, one of the sentences that I use day in and day out is, time is acid to the price of a home. Time is acid to the price of a home. And consequently, the longer it tracks days on the market, the more buyers think it's overpriced and the less likely they are to pay the price. So your listings will typically sell at higher prices. And also, because you're putting money in the pocket of a buyer can afford to pay more for one of your listings. And we'll talk about that later, and still be at the mental price point that they would like to be. You can use it to maintain transactional control. I had some agents say to me the other day, well, Greg, one of the disadvantages, I believe, to the buyer rebate program is that I end up having to deal with both the buyer and the seller, and I only make a little bit more. Let's say I offer a 2% rebate to buyers who buy my listings. It's true that I would typically offer a 3% co-broke commission, and so I will end up netting 1% more, but while that all sounds good, I have to deal with a buyer, and I don't know if I want to deal with a buyer for 1% more. Well, in my view, all the years I listed property, 35 years, I thought it was an amazing advantage to have the buyer. I would much rather directly interface with the buyer if I wasn't earning a nickel more. If I was just earning my typical list side commission, whatever that was, if I was just earning that, just to have transactional control, to deal with the buyer, make sure I was the one involved in helping them get the loan. I was the one involved in making sure that the inspection went well, that I was the one that was bouncing back and forth between buyer and seller, because my job was to sell those listings. I wasn't focused on, oh, gee, poor me, I'm not making double my commission. I'm not making double my commission because I have to work with the buyer. I mean, nobody in any other business sees it that way. And whether it's the car business, the computer business, I'll talk about that later, all of the representatives for the sellers love it when they can deal directly with the buyer. So I think transactional control is a huge advantage. Obviously, it's going to set you apart in your market. Again, it's off the radar. It's off the scope of most realtors right now. So what a stand-apart strategy it is. And it also would allow you to be a real estate thought leader. You can learn it, talk about it, know about it better than anyone, write blogs on it, record videos on it. You can do what I'm doing. And let me tell you, I get a lot of traction with the stuff I teach because it's, let's say, Mavericky. They're the brand, Real Estate Mavericks. But this has probably in the last 30 days gotten more traction than any other single thing I've taught. And I've taught some pretty edgy stuff. I mean, this has gotten majorly big time attraction, record turnouts at webinars and the videos I'm doing. I mean, that's thought leader stuff. Thought leader stuff is when you're leading thought. Thought leader stuff is not when you're just putting out what everybody else is putting out and sharing it. Oh yeah, gee, here's 3 ways that you can make your home look nicer, or do this or whatever. No, thought leader stuff is when you're saying what other people aren't, when you're thinking what other people aren't, when you're seeing what other people aren't, and you're putting it out there, when you're not pandering to the polls. You're not pandering to the polls, you're setting the polls. If the polls are 80% against and 20% for, something, you're the one that really believes that the 80% is wrong, and you're being out there a thought leader. You're persuading the 80% who don't see it your way to see it your way. That's thought leadership. And believe me, when you start becoming a thought leader in your market, you will own your market. You can also obviously use it to accelerate your market share for all the reasons that I have just mentioned. And you have to see what's happening. You have to see the absolute flood of non-traditional business models that are being launched all over this country. Everything from fee duck, where you go in and you bid, where realtors bid the lowest commission to win the appointment with a home seller. I'm not a fan of that at all, by the way. I mean, just all the different things going on. You have to be feeling it. Boy, if you aren't feeling it, you're going to soon. And I believe all of you are right now. The downward pressure on commission, I believe buyer rebates are a key strategy to help you survive the next 24 months in real estate. And you're going to see what my son Brian calls the slingshot effect, and that is this business has been so much the same for so long. In the next 24 months, bam, I think it's just going to change just like that. And I think so many realtors who are really not seeing it are just going to get taken out of business. They're going to see their market share drop like that, and they're going to look around and say, wow. So the other thing is, I think it's going to allow you not just to survive, but to thrive in this impending disruption. So let's go through the actual strategy now. First, step 1, you want to choose a demographic. This is critical. I do not want you to go out and offer just generally have this buyer rebate program. You are going to be the Chinese restaurant. You are going to be the Chinese restaurant. You're going to have a demographic and you're going to own that demographic. Now, this doesn't mean you have to stop doing what you're doing. One of my coaching strategies is for my top producing agents, hey, go for it. What you're doing now, just keep doing it. But you want to take a demographic. You want to open what we're going to call the new business, the new Chinese restaurant in that demographic. And you're going to own that sucker. You're going to own that demographic. Then you're going to expand it beyond then when you see how profitable it can become. So your demographic can be, and I've got boxers and audios and videos on this, so this isn't the point to spend a lot of time on this in this webinar. The typical farm, contiguous homes, a type of home like homes of character or 2-story homes or homes in a certain price range that are all over the place. They're not contiguous. It can just be a type of home, or it can be a type of person like lawyers. And I've talked about that before. Just because I'm a lawyer, I would probably be a good realtor to market all through Phoenix, that I in particular understand lawyers, can help lawyers sell their homes better, can protect lawyers better, etc. I'm going to recommend that we use contiguous homes for this buyer rebate strategy, simply because you're more accustomed to it. It's the typical farm, and you can establish this 25% low median price, which I'm going to talk about to compute your 2 buyer rebates. It's very easy to establish that in an area of contiguous homes, because generally in an area of contiguous homes, you'll have a pretty consistent price range, where if you're dealing with type of person or type of home all over a certain area, unless you're making your type of home a certain price range, you could have price ranges all over the place. Like lawyers, if you were going to be the realtor for lawyers, lawyers could own homes from $200,000-300,000 to 20 million or something. So bottom line is, I recommend to keep it easy, you use the typical farm, the area of contiguous homes. Now, you could use, if you wanted to use type of person or you wanted to use type of home, you could use minimum rebate language. And if any of you really feel like you want to do that, just email me, greg@realestatemaverics.com, and I can help you with that. But I suggest you use the typical area of contiguous homes. Now, that's step 1. Step 2, you want to identify your demographic. And I have a whole seminar on that, by the way, how to do that. I have a boxer audio. In fact, at the end, we're making an offer for anyone that would just like some of our best audios and videos. One of those is on how to choose your demographic. And Jen, I know you're listening. Would you be sure and make a note, because I didn't put that on my list, that will be one of the boxers we send out to everyone on. It's a Boxer audio. I coach, a lot of my coaching is on audio through a system called Boxer. So Jen, if you would be sure and put that on the list, I'd appreciate it. Okay, step 2, you want to determine your 2 buyer rebates. Buyers who buy any listing in the community. So you're going to offer 1 rebate to buyers who buy any listing in the community. This community is your demographic. You got that? This is your demographic. You're opening the picture, you're opening the Chinese restaurant, and you're opening your real estate business right in the center of this demographic. Just visually, just visualize that. It doesn't have to physically be there. And it's going to have these 3 points on it, okay, that I talked about before the webinar. 1 point is the home selling strategy. 1 point is your fee structure. 1 point is the person, that we'll call it the you, and their unique ability to sell homes faster and at higher prices. Okay, so that's the 3rd point. And the center of that is your actual marketing, taking the 3 points of the business model and marketing it into the community. So buyers who buy any listing in the community, so picture that, you'll have 1 rebate there, and then you'll have a rebate for buyers who buy your listings, and that'll be a different rebate. And we're going to talk about that. So the first thing you're going to do is assess the average price range in your demographic. That's pretty easy to do. And then you're going to take 1% of the 25% low medium price. And let me explain that, because I didn't know how to really put that in a sentence so it was absolutely clear. Basically, you're just going to look at the quartiles. We'll call it the quartiles, the 25th, the 50th, 75th, and you want to look at about that 25th quartile. For example, if homes in the community generally average in price point anywhere from a low of around 300 to a high of maybe mid 4s or so, you'd probably want to pick like $350,000, which would be, there would be a few homes that'll sell for less than that, but not many. Okay, so you take 1%, and let's use 350,000. You see, I'm going to use that as an example. I do that a lot because that's a good median price, good low median price range. So you take 1% of that number, and then you take 2% of that number, okay? And you can see right away, if the low median price is $350,000, your rebates are going to be $3,500 and $7,000. 1% of 3,500 or 350,000 is 3,500. 2% is 7,000. So that's what you're going to do after you identify your demographic. Now, the reason I recommend doing that, going through that exercise, is because while it is powerful to market percentages, it is a bit more powerful to market dollars as opposed to percentages. People get that faster than having to compute a percentage. And for, let's say in this 350, let's say that homes do sell for as low as $300,000. Don't stress giving up a tad more. So if somebody buys a home for, say you have a buyer and they buy, and they would be entitled to the 1% rebate because they're looking at other homes in the community. They're not buying your listing. And let's say they buy a home for $320,000. You still give them the $3,500. So what? It's another $300. You don't quibble about a few $100s. That's why you pick that low 25% quartile. Does that make sense? Okay, so your $3,500 rebate will apply to all listed homes in your demographic except your listings. With your listings, of course, it's going to be double that. So get your arms around that. Your $3,500 will apply, and don't apply it outside the demographic. Do not do that. The whole idea is to own the demographic. You want to be a champion of that demographic. You're going to use this strategically in order for you to list more homes, as you'll see later. So you want to make this offer uniquely into your demographic. You want to make them feel special. You want them to be aware of that over time, that you're building a business that specializes in marketing and selling their homes at top dollar. So that's why it's so important to limit your 1% to just homes in this particular community and demographic. Now, if you want to open a second restaurant, let's say you go identify another demographic somewhere, visually, and you apply it into that one, that's fine too. So it's just like opening a second Chinese restaurant. But let's start with our first Chinese restaurant. Let's get the model refined before we go replicate it and open more, let's say before we make it a franchise, right? Okay, so your $7,000 rebate will apply to your own listed homes. Make sense? Talked about that. And then the $3,500 will leave you a $7,000 buyer agent commission based on a 3% co-broke. So that's easy to compute. If you typically would sell homes of $350,000, then you would get a 3% co-broke and 2% is $7,000. So you have $7,000 left. You want to insert minimum commission. Now, this is important. In the fine print, in the little whatever, in your marketing materials, I think it's important to insert minimum commission receipt language. And when I say in fine print, I don't mean so people can't read it. I just mean it's not your major marketing message. You want to make it, you want people to read it, just a little asterisk at the bottom. And well, I've helped you with that. I've helped you with that because here it is. And of course, all of you know that have heard my webinars before. You don't have to take notes because we'll be glad to send out this slide deck to you. Just email Jen, J-E-N-N, at realestatemaverics.com, and you will receive a copy of this slide deck. So all your notes are taken for you. So here's some language for you. The buyer rebate. So this would be down with an asterisk after your, after your big messaging, and we'll be talking about that messaging later. Buyer rebate based on $350,000 price and receipt of a typical 3% buyer agent commission. Okay, so that's the part that addresses the 1%. It's basically saying it's based on you receiving a 3% buyer agent commission. Now, if people ask you about that, I would explain that if you receive less than that, let's say that there's only a 2.5% or 2% co-broke offered on the particular home they want to buy, then you'll just reduce it proportionally. So they still would receive a rebate, it just would be a proportional reduction. People would understand that, perfectly fair. Now, the seller, look at this language here. Seller value add is based on, this is again in the language, we'll call it the fine print, but I don't mean fine print that they can't read. Seller value add based on $350,000 sale price and receipt of a typical list side commission. You could put in your list side commission. I just said typical there to give you the flexibility to either insert it, or actually I probably wouldn't insert it here. I'd leave that there, and then whatever your commission plan is, I would explain that to the home sellers when you're listing. And notice the characterization there, value add. You'll see what that means in a minute when we're marketing for listings into a community and we're basically saying we can get you top dollar plus $7,000. That's the value add. I want to say that again. You'll see later when I get into the marketing message that the value add is where we're saying, talk to me first. I can sell your home for top dollar plus $7,000. And that's the value add we're talking about. Okay. So I suggest you refer buyers. You guys know me that are in my coaching. I suggest you refer buyers not interested in your listings to your buyer partners, maybe a 75-25 split. You want to focus on listing properties. You do not want to focus on being a buyer agent. Nothing wrong with buyer agents. You just can't build a scalable business doing that, in my view. And again, he or she who controls the inventory in any business controls the business. The $7,000 rebate will leave you 1% more than you typically earn on a co-broke sale. I mentioned that. Typically, when people buy your listing, you're going to give them the 2% rebate. You typically would pay perhaps a 3% co-broke, so you're going to earn a little bit more. I talked about that earlier. Even if you earn nothing more, and again, I talked about that earlier, it's to your advantage to have transactional control. Transactional control. So the agency relationship, a lot of agents ask me about that. Should be no different than if you sold your own listing to an unrepresented buyer who calls you on your sign or does whatever they do. Every state has rules that allow you to be some type of either dual agent or transactional agent of this, or you can just say to have the buyer sign off. You represent the seller and the buyer signs off and is not represented. And let me talk about that for a minute, because when you're putting, let's say, for buyers who buy your listing, when you're putting 2% of the sale price, let's say on a $350,000 home, $7,000 in their pocket, heck, they can just go out. If you have any discomfort, if they have any discomfort, they can just go out for $1,000. I am an attorney. I can assure you there are tons of attorneys who would be thrilled for $1,000 or $1,500 to represent a buyer in a transaction. And then they have attorney representation. I mean, a real estate expert attorney who has hundreds and hundreds of negotiations and transactions under their belt. So you can easily point out to a buyer if they have any discomfort at all in the agency situation where you say, I'm only going to represent the seller, be aware, it's not like I'm not going to treat you fair, I'm going to be evil to you, but from an agency standpoint, I am the seller's representative, not yours. Just recommend that they get an attorney. Also, there'd be tons of realtors out there who I'm sure for $1,000 or $1,500 would be thrilled to just represent that, just spend a few hours representing that particular buyer, helping them buy your listing. So a lot of workarounds here where you're still putting a lot of money in the buyer's pocket, okay? So don't get caught up with agency. I mean, that's all I want to say is listing agents who control both buyers and sellers are in the future. And I just want you to, I believe firmly that while buyer agents play an amazing role, buyer agents are like remarkable. Come on, for all my life, they represent buyers, and the buyers don't pay them typically. Typically, they're paid by the sellers. So the buyers get the services of a buyer agent for free. It's like amazing. It's no wonder that buyers use buyer agents. But when this starts to evolve, and hopefully you'll be an early adopter, when this rebate magic starts to evolve, because the Justice Department is so encouraging it, and most of the states who didn't allow it are now allowing it, and the other 10 will soon. The bottom line is, I believe when buyers have the option to take the money or have a buyer agent, I think they're going to be perfectly fine buying through the listing agent. So listing agents are going, in my view, to control both buyers and sellers in the future. Think about this. In virtually every other industry, you buy directly from the seller's representative. Cars, computers, airplanes, life insurance, auto insurance, title insurance, whatever it is. There's not like you as the buyer have a separate representative. That's just like, people don't think about that. You know that they represent the company, and so you just are on guard. And if you feel like you need some extra help because it's a really big buck purchase, you might hire an expert to help you. So it's true in virtually every other industry. And I really think that what will happen, I'm not saying I want it to happen, I just think it will happen, is that buyer agents will get squeezed out of our business the way travel agents got squeezed out of, when they were between the airlines and the consumers. Travel agents were squeezed out because they represented a transactional cost of maybe 4, 5, 6, 7, 8% in the transaction. And basically, when airlines could offer lower fees, consumers all the time would rather have those lower fees. And if you understand how travel agents were squeezed out, it didn't happen overnight. It was that there were lower fees made available through various websites if you bought direct without a travel agent. And what happened is those websites, of which airlines were backing them, started to become more and more popular because people could get a lower fare. So they just they put aside dealing with a travel agent and bought direct. And then the slingshot effect happened. And over a period of a couple of years, basically most all travel agents were displaced. And now the only travel agents that exist are the ones where basically you pay them. They charge a premium to the buyer. And I believe buyer agents, that will be a role for buyer agents in the future. Like I said, buyers, remember, will take their rebate, will take what's going into their pocket, and they'll actually out of pocket pay a buyer agent or an attorney to represent them. Okay, so step 3. So we've gone through step 1 and step 2. Step 1 was identify your demographic. Step 2 was compute what your rebates are going to be, what your rebate is going to be to a buyer who buys any home in your demographic that is not your listing, and then a different rebate for buyers who buy your listing. So step 3, developing a compelling message to the buyer. So to the buyers, this is how you're going to draw buyers into your demographic to you. So here's a few samples. Kingsgate, let's say Kingsgate is our demographic. Buy a Kingsgate home from me, get $3,500 free. So just buy any home in the community. I pay $3,500. I pay $3,500 to buy a Kingsgate home from me, or when you buy a Kingsgate home from me. Remember, you could do like 50 variations of this kind of thing. Your number one goal is to attract Kingsgate buyers to help you list Kingsgate homes. That's your number one goal. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Greg, boy, this would probably attract buyers where then I would be able to sell a lot of Kingsgate homes. Well, that's your number 2 goal, is to attract Kingsgate buyers to sell Kingsgate homes. But here's the deal. The best way to control the listings is to control the buyers. You go in on a listing appointment. And you're able to control the buyers. You show the home seller that you have a list of buyers that are looking for homes in Kingsgate but haven't found their right home. And they got in touch with you because of the $3,500 rebate you offer on any Kingsgate home. When you're able to go in and do that and talk about that on a listing appointment, can you imagine how powerful that is? And then when you say to the home seller that if you list with me, I double that. I give these buyers who I have right now who are expecting a $3,500 rebate, I give them $7,000. I give them $7,000, double, because you're my listing. Guys, way powerful. Okay, so first goal is to develop a compelling message for buyers, okay? That's step 3. And the 2 purposes are, number 1, to have a lot of buyers to help you list more homes, and number 2, to have a lot of buyers so you can feed them to your buyer agents and you can sell homes co-broke, okay? So step 4, develop a compelling message to homeowners in your demographic. So that's a second message. For example, learn how I can sell your home for $7,000 more. Don't list until you talk with me first. Ask how I sell Kingsgate homes for $7,000 more. Call me first. Selling your home, ask how I add $7,000 to your price. Don't list until you talk with me. Learn how to sell $7,000 over market. Talk to me first. Now, what you're saying is, okay, Greg, that's great. That will get me indoors. And I realize that the single biggest problem that most real estate agents have is they don't get enough doors. They spend more time looking for business than doing business. They spend more time looking for business than doing business. And I will tell you in the very beginning of the webinar what I was talking about, and that is building this three-corner business model with the marketing in the center. The idea there is to build a business model that attracts customers to you, so you're not out there like you think the owner of a Chinese restaurant is out there all day long knocking on doors trying to convince people to come to the Chinese restaurant. No, what they do is they have such a good business model, good cuisine, great prices, amazing atmosphere, whatever it is they have, that's what draws people in, and that's what you want to have. So the idea, step 5, is learn when you go over to the home sellers based on the message to the home sellers what you're going to say. How am I going to justify saying I can get you $7,000 more for your home? So I talked about this. Be sure, Jen, that you add that Voxer to the list that we send out to anyone who requests it. Again, Jen at realestatemaverics.com. I go into that in detail in a Voxer, but I am not going to ignore it here. So first, you explain to the home seller, number one, that when you offer a $7,000 buyer rebate, that creates more demand. Anybody can logically and transparently see that. If I'm offering $7,000 back on your home and the other realtors who have home listed in Kingsgate are not offering that, I'm going to attract more demand. More demand, just logically, supply and demand, more demand translates to a higher price. So that's the first thing I'd say to a home seller. This buyer rebate is going to attract more demand. More demand results in a higher price. Next, my buyer rebate, if I attract more demand, not only will just the demand itself create a higher price, but also that will increase the probability. This is the good wording. That will increase the probability that your home will sell faster. Creating more buyer demand increases the probability a home will sell faster. And as we all know, homes that sell with fewer days on the market generally sell for more, because when buyers see, and I talked about it before, time is acid to the price of a home. When buyers see a lot of days on the market, they tend to presume that a home is overpriced because other buyers have rejected it, or that something is wrong, So that's the next thing that you point out. That's point 2, okay, faster sale means higher price. And then point 3 is that by putting $7,000 in the pocket of a buyer who buys your home, I get a more flexible buyer in terms of negotiation. Essentially, the buyer can pay up to $7,000 more for your home and still end up at the price point that they want to be. I got to tell you, in my view, those 3, I can tell you for sure, those 3 points are super powerful. There's no seller that's not going to logically and transparently see the power of those 3 points. So you put out the compelling message, you get the listing appointment, and then as part of your business model, and this is a combination of your home selling process and your fee structure, but it's primarily your home selling process, the rebate. It's not directly related to the fee structure. So this is that point on the 3-point formula. It's part of your home selling formula. Like, for example, our 29-day fast sale plan, not throwing homes out there on the market, is part of that. So this would be part of that. And I think it's clear that any home seller can see the advantages of this model to them. Okay, so that was step 5. Step 5 was understanding how to present this to home sellers so that they would say, yeah, boy, I do see how you can get me, a couple percent more for my home. It's only a couple percent more. Like, it's nothing. Creating the demand that this will do, creating the quicker sale, and then putting $7,000 in the pocket of a home seller. I think that every day of the week justifies that saying in ads that, listen to me, let me show you how I can get you $7,000 more for your home. I don't think there's any home seller that would say, no, I don't think that having all that be the case would help me get 2% more for my home. Okay, so number 6, develop a marketing plan for your demographic. So you've got the message. It's one thing to have the message. You've got the messaging now. So that's an important step. But the next step is to actually do what? To develop a marketing plan to push that message into your demographic. Now, what I want you to do is do 3 touches a month. This is intensive stuff. You need to pick a demographic, choose a demographic, select a demographic that is not so large that you can't touch every home, every homeowner in that demographic, not once, not twice, but 3 times a month, at least for the first 60 days. You've got to do 6 touches in the first 60 days. After that, when you get established, you could probably drop back to 2. I'm not sure if I would, but you must touch everyone in that community 3 times a month for 60 days. I can tell you that is the sweet spot. Doing more than that would only have a very marginal return. Doing less than that will diminish your return significantly. 3 times a month, just a bit over once a week. So I'm going to give you some ideas for doing that. Now, I have separate Voxers on each of these. So Jen, if you'll make a note of these in our list, and I think we have it on there, that this would be in the list of Voxers, the community events newsletter. This is one of the most powerful things I ever did, that once a month, you'll be pushing into the community a newsletter which will preview all the cool events coming up in your city, in your town, the next month. Things for kids, the movies, I always use the example, the Blue Angels coming to the airport, whatever the cool new stuff coming in, like this month, it would be for next month. And you put that out about the middle of the month. This is extremely powerful. Many of the agents in my coaching are building this, doing it, leveraging it, having great success with it. We actually have forms that we give them that they can download and just use and plug stuff in. And so you're welcome to my Voxer on the community event newsletter. That'll be 1 touch a month. The new neighbor welcome card. I'm not even going to go into this. I went into it last webinar. If you don't know about this, then this can be on the list of audios that you receive. This is one of the most powerful farming techniques in the history of real estate. I assure you of that. It's the new neighbor welcome card, where essentially everyone who buys any listing in your community, you have a welcome card signed with a note from maybe the 100 homeowners who surround that. That's all laid out in an audio. We'll put that on the list for you. You're going to love that. You don't know how often that'll be. That could be once a month. It's not going to touch everybody in your neighborhood. It's just a really cool thing to do. And by the way, in the community events newsletter, your messaging will be very small on the back. On all of this, unlike on that one, you don't have big messaging. This message just is small on the back. Everybody sees it. It doesn't have to be in their face. The whole idea of the community events newsletter and the welcome card is simply to do a nice thing, and then your messaging is very small. Okay, EDDM postcard mailers, you're all familiar with how to do that. That's a way simply to get this message in a big form into your neighborhoods at a very low cost. There are a lot of other ways to do that as well. Promo cards. It is unbelievable to me that real estate agents, like virtually all the 1.2 million real estate realtors in this country, have business cards without a compelling message on the back. I don't even understand that. It just has their photo, and I'm with this company, and we're amazing. We've been in business 300 years, and I've won all these awards and all that stuff. I mean, who cares? Trust me on this. The home sellers don't care, that much. I mean, what they care about is what you can do for them, what's your compelling message. And I believe every business card should have on the back a compelling message, something that people look at it and say, wow, what is that all about? Where they ask you right then, even if they're not thinking about selling, where they got to ask you about this right now. And boy, I'll tell you, having that's buyer rebate language on the back of your card, which would be for the $7,000 one, ask me how you sell your home for $7,000 above market, for $7,000 more than it's worth. Are you kidding me? You don't think anybody's going to ask you about that when you put that card in their hand? And that's what you want. Every time you put a business card in somebody's hand, anywhere, anytime, you want them to ask you about, they want them to see that on the back and ask you about that. It's called our promo cards. We teach that. That's been a foundation of my coaching forever. Bet you $1 cards. This would be for any FSBO in the community. I had great results. I used to carry these in my glove compartment. You put a real dollar bill there in the center, and I'll bet you $1 I can sell your home before you do, and you just slide it under the matter for sale by owners. I could tell you a funny story about that, but it'd take too long because I don't want to run behind here on the webinar. What are we doing here? I don't know if we're behind or not. In any case, I don't want to, yeah, actually we are running behind, but whatever. This is too good. You guys are hanging on. I can see everybody's still with us. Okay, so that's something. We've got a little audio on that as well, if you want to do that. But the idea is 3 touches into your community, into your demographic. Step 7. If you're in one of the 10 states where this is still not legal, there's a workaround, and that is have the rebate come from your seller with a commensurate reduction of your commission. So the seller is effectively offering the buyer a credit at closing. You can work this around the same way. Just think about that. You can get that done. But step 8, and then so that's the way you can do that. And I actually, if you look at, well, I'll get to step 9 in a minute. Basically, step 9 is check with your Department of Real Estate. You want to call them and just make sure that if you do that in those states, that's all going to be fine. But I see no reason. There's no law that says a seller can't agree after a price is negotiated to rebate to a buyer some fixed amount of money. So that would be a way that you could do that, and you could tweak your wording a little bit. Okay. Step 8, you want to understand lender rules regarding interested party rebates, IPCs they're called. And interested party rebates are when interested parties to the transaction, and this is Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, third party, secondary market rules. Interested parties to the transaction include the realtor. You were an interested party because you're earning something upon the closing of the transaction. So generally, to sell loans into the secondary market, and as you know, virtually every home loan is sold into the secondary market, so they have to be packaged so that they are. Rebates of up to 3% are for conventional loans are perfectly fine. It's right in the rules, and actually for certain amounts of down payment, rebates can be higher, but 3% is the low end on residential non-investor transactions. For investor transactions, it's 2%, but for typical owner-occupied purchases, it's 3% and can even be higher. Can be used to cover closing costs and prepaids. And there are ways to have this include in the appraisal, the home inspection. For example, on the home inspection, typically a home inspector, the buyer would pay the home inspector for the home inspection, maybe $300, $500, $700, depending on the home, pay up front, and it would not be paid out of the closing proceeds. It would not be paid at closing. Home inspectors will still probably want that, but the way it can be done is you can charge it. You can charge it many times with a home inspector, or have the home inspector agree to refund it. The buyer can, and then it is a legitimate transactional cost. So then it can be paid out of the closing. The buyer rebate can be used to pay the home inspection, and then the home inspector would refund that money to the buyer. That's perfectly fine. So sometimes buyers have to pay appraisals up front, and that usually would be a transactional reimbursement anyway. But my point is, you can take an entire first-year premium. Typically, that's paid right there at closing. That's perfectly fine to use for a buyer rebate. So typically, what you'll find in many transactions is that a buyer rebate there'll be $5,000 to $6,000 in typical prepaids and closing costs for a buyer on the purchase of a $350,000 home, just a smidgen less than the $7,000. Now, I won't go into detail because I'm going to have on how you can even work that, because it doesn't say you can't do it. It just says that if the buyer does get cash in pocket, there has to be a little bit of an adjustment for lending purposes in the perceived purchase price. So if you'd like an invitation to my in-depth webinar regarding these IPC lender rebate rules, just email jen@realestatemaverics.com. This is going to be a small group. I'm going to limit to a small number so everybody can ask questions. This will be an attorney level. This will be an attorney level webinar. That's going to go into great detail into the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, third party, secondary market rules. The idea being, be amazing. I mean, if you're going to do this buyer rebate thing, be like the total thought leader. Know it better than anybody. Know it better than the lenders you're dealing with. So if they say, well, no, I don't know if I can do that, you can point out the rules to them and show them that they can and how to make it work, that you can be an absolute expert. That is what this is all about. So if you'd like to attend that, I'll be holding that here in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to keep it to a small group. Just email Jen, ask for an invite, and we'll probably take the first 50 people or so into that. Okay, and step 9, if in doubt about anything, check with your Department of Real Estate. Then whatever they tell you by phone, if you call, verify email in writing so they don't even have to respond to your email. You just send the email so that you have tracking. You should always do that. Whenever you get input from even your broker, anything that you have any doubt or concern about, you just want to do a follow-up email. Thank you for whatever, and reiterate what they said, and that this is what you're going to move forward and do. And even if they don't reply, you've got that tracking so that later on you can demonstrate that you are basing what you did on good faith and you actually sent something to the department, your broker, etc. And then step 10 is don't make, and this is the final step, don't make the fatal assumption. The fatal assumption is because you know how to do the technical work of a business, it doesn't mean you know how to build a business that does that technical work. They're two separate things. It's one thing to know how to list and sell real estate. It's another thing to know how to build this three-corner business model that I'm talking about. The idea is to build a business. Your goal should be to attract business because of your business model, not because of your personality. I want to say that again. What this buyer rebate strategy is about. This is not just a strategy for you to go out and list and sell more homes. This is a strategy to become a part of a business model with a goal to attract business because of your business model, not because of your personality. If you build your business around you, you will never have a business that operates without you. I want you to look at that slide for a minute, please. If you build your business around you, you will never have a business that operates without you. Is that what you want? Do you have an ego that says to you, gee, I never want my business to operate without me? Well, guess what? When you see the kind of life you can have, when you build a business model that will operate without you, and you can choose to be as involved as you want or not, you will see that it's a lot better to build a business model that operates without you. And you will, if you build your business around you, you will never build a business that's scalable and saleable and sets you free. The idea is to build a business that has equity, to build a business that somebody else would buy, to become so smart in this buyer rebate area, this component, that you build a business model that confounds other people. They can't even figure out how to do it, that they'd mess it all up if they do. That's what it's all about. That's building a business model that will set you free. So I'll just finish by saying our brand, as you know, is Real Estate Mavericks, and we believe that Mavericks wake up excited. We believe that Mavericks have personality. We believe that Mavericks look smart, and actually we believe that Mavericks are smart. And what you want to ask yourself is there a Maverick in you? And I know you wouldn't be listening to today's webinar if there was not. So for a copy of the presentation and selected links to some of our best audios and videos, email jen@realestatemaverics.com. I've said that 5 times already. I'm sure you know it. And if you'd like for more information on our coaching, you can email me. That's greg@realestatemaverics.com. I'm going to go off of screen share for just a second. Bang, there we are. And I'm just, there we go. So good. I'm just going to say thank you guys for joining. Sorry I ran a little bit over. I hope you felt that it was worth it. I hope you felt it was content rich. I am traveling next week, so may have a webinar Tuesday, may not sure. Everybody who's on this is on the list, so you'll know. Definitely we'll have one the following week. If you'd like an invite to the one on the IPC rules, the interested party rules, by all means, just email jen@realestatemaverics. And as always, I will finish and say I salute the Maverick in you. Thanks, guys, and have an amazing day.